That's dreadful. Well, let's
That's
hope
terrifying.
he doesn't get that passed, and let's hope the whole SNP claps
Well, this is
before it gets any worse with the current
absolutely.
SNP
I mean,
claps.
sex-selective abortion, it just sends shivers down your spine. Again, China.
Yeah,
It's
it's
exactly what
horrendous.
went on in China. Domestic.
Hi again, guys. It's just a quick one. This whole topic really drives me insane because, and I don't even like using terms like pro-choice or anti-abortion because being, ideally, we'd all be anti-abortion, yeah? All pregnancies would happen in an ideal situation and no one would get poorly or, their babies wouldn't get poorly and it would all be great. So, I would much prefer that. So even though I'm, quote, pro-choice, I'm actually deep down anti-abortion. It depresses me, all right? Because ideally we wouldn't have to do this. We wouldn't. It's just really upsetting. But of course, I wouldn't take that choice away from anybody. And the world that we live in, it's the right choice for many people much of the time. But you see, what I've been seeing since this Roe v. Wade was hot on the internet, in amongst all of the other things that, apparently it's tied to transgenderism, LGB and all the rest of it. So nobody can tackle any of these things standalone. They tie them all up so that if you're anti-trans, then that means you're anti-abortion. And if you're, the other, vice versa. But so with the Roe v. Wade, I don't know if any of you guys remember seeing some women simulating ripping babies out of themselves outside some courthouse in the States. They were parading up and down the streets, having the most mental, like, what Americans could be like sometimes. So it's like proper mental, thousands of people hanging around outside these courthouses, being all dramatic, ripping her clothes off. This bird was bursting fake blood bags on herself, ripping baby dolls out from under her dress and all that. It's disgusting. So what I was seeing when I was looking at that footage is basically people begging to not to have selective abortions, but to kill, right? It wasn't to them, it wasn't about ending a pregnancy that couldn't go on. It was more about smashing babies' heads into the fucking floor and stuff and drinking their blood. And the arguments backwards and forwards were so vehement that in the end, it just sounded, whatever you were reading, whether you were reading text or listening to a YouTube video, all the words just blurred into, I want to kill that fucking baby. I want to kill that baby. Kill it, kill it. So basically, the words, they've made the argument so aggressive that people have lost sight of what it is. And I swear to God, they're begging to kill babies. Now, you see this Humza situation. It was interesting what McRae said about, it's cultural, and well, GB said it first and McRae agreed. It wasn't an aspect that popped into my head, but when McRae backs it up, I was like, well, yeah, maybe they've popped him in on purpose, because they do place people and, nobody earns these positions, do they? They've popped him in on purpose so that they, it's a good excuse, like, we can't say no to Humza or we're being a racist or whatever. So they could just, do you know what I mean? They got a scapegoat there. And so bringing this to Scotland, it's going to make people in other places, now that the argument's so violent, it's going to make other people in other places think, well, we need it like Scotland as well. We've got to have that. Do you know what I mean? Just in case. And I swear to God, 15 years from now, girls will be getting pregnant just so they can have an abortion, because it'll be the fashion. It's, I just can't handle it. But yeah, it is part of the I don't want to use the word depopulation, but I can't think of a better one at the moment. I'll type in a name that I've never seen before. Flotentio. But so, you know, my mind's elsewhere. But yeah, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. But yeah, they've obviously placed Humza on purpose so that he can bring this in without challenge, because challenging him would just be racist, and it's just going to make other places beg for the same, in quote, rights. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good take that he's been brought in because, like you said, I mean, let's face it, you know, we know what goes on with these things. These people have been, it's all manipulated, isn't it? This is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I also think when you have sex selection, it's nigh on the males that are wanted. It's the boys that are wanted. And this is back to culture again. And I'm saying it, as you can hear, through gritted teeth, because it's uncomfortable to even say it, because there's the word phobe that's shoved on everything. So you're frightened to say what you think you're seeing because of it.
GB, you were asking what is it that impedes the progress of some countries to reach so-called civilization? And I guess that's my question, is what, not you in particular, but what the hell do people think civilization is? I mean, you know, I've just described that being accosted by a bloody 7-year-old or, you know, a small child, it looked like she'd popped out of the Victorian era, begging for a quid. We've got people sleeping on the streets. We've got, as mentioned earlier in this space, you know, pedos every 8 doors up your street. People locked up in prison. I mean, that's not civilised. Yeah, some of them have committed crimes, but then what is crime? You know, that's subjective, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We've got people aborting children because, like, you know, life conditions aren't conducive to them being able to be a mother. You know, basically, what is civilization?
Well, I've just thought of a counter argument to Domestic's point that we're all uncivilized, which I agree with, although we're all uncivilized to different varying degrees. But using the one about, I hate this word, fisting in San Francisco, big difference being, of course, that would actually be illegal had it been spotted or had the police bothered to police the event that was taking place. Whereas the treatment of throwing gay people off, you know, strapping them to chairs and throwing them off buildings is obviously acceptable within the rules of said country. So that's a difference. There's a difference there. It's that they're both hugely uncivilized and revolting, and they're not even you know, one's death and one is a sexual act. I mean, they're both revolting, but one is obviously far more serious. But I think that's a key difference. On they're not great analogies because of the different levels, obviously, but the key difference is one is actually illegal in one civilization, and the other would not be seen as such. And yet, funnily enough, I bet fisting one of those countries would be illegal, but not throwing someone off a roof. Can't believe I said fisting so many times.
Yeah, I know, it's so gross, isn't it? I've learned, I think, well, one always thinks one has learned it all, but no, there's always something new and gross on the internet. I'll just say, I mean, for God's sake, this isn't civilised that I've even learned these fucking words. All right, I'm an adult, but children come on here and rimming. That's another one that I've learned because they're teaching it to children in schools. I saw that there was an article in the Metro. Yeah, it was in the Metro, and I think it was 2020.
Who decided that was something
There was a big
children needed
everywhere.
to know?
Do you know what? I can't think of anything more dangerous. There's a reason we don't eat shit.
Uh,
Do you know what I mean? To stay alive. Sorry.
No,
Sorry,
absolutely. I'm literally, I'm just gobsmacked. I mean, we're emptying the room between us. Let's just point that out. But I'm laughing. I shouldn't be laughing because I cannot believe that's being taught to children. That's shameful. I'm sorry, and that's not meant in any homophobic sense, because that's something that will be done in heterosexual sex, as is, I've got to say that bloody word again, fisting, so that these are things that are ultimately, they're not something that a child should ever need.
That's what I was saying before, though,
Yeah.
GB. So the fisting, the rimming, the bloody transing, all of these things, it just reminded me because you said, it's not homophobic to be against women. Of course not, but they've got it all tied in together. LGBT isn't just, well, for one thing, they've got that T on there. But yeah, so they've tied all of these wacky things up with educating about LGB so that nobody can object. Because even you're afraid to say that women is gross because you think it might sound homophobic. I mean, what?
Exactly. Yeah, that's so true. So true. I was wary of how I'm saying it because you're then sort of, that's why I pointed out it's all done in heterosexual sex, because I'm obviously having to feel I've got to back up myself so I'm not deemed as homophobic. God, it really is. It's the biggest Trojan horse of all.